I'll quote my dear friend 𝗪𝗯𝗃𝗿𝗃 from CBS Sports as we look ahead. Embrace the joy of March Madness because it is a joyful time and experience.
Yeah, it is indeed. Thank you.
Welcome to Wait, What? Sports Biz Chat with DP and McGhee, the podcast that takes an often irreverent, sometimes cynical, and on occasion a serious look at the business of sports. I'm your co-host, David Parrell.
And I'm Tim McGhee.
Tim, the madness is almost upon us. The World Baseball Classic experienced a shocker last night. F1 kicked off from Australia to mixed reviews, with Apple TV serving as a U.S. media partner. And, well, we got hit with another sports betting scandal. That's never a dull moment, of course. But, Tim, what's on your mind?
Yeah, last night was pazzo, huh? As the Italians like to say. Yeah. Crazy. I want to talk about something that we've been talking about off and on for quite some time on the show, which is the ongoing labor negotiations between the WNBA and the Players Association. It seems that Adam Silver was sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, prescient in his comments earlier last month that it would go down to the 11th hour. I think it's gone beyond the 11th hour now, but they had a marathon session yesterday leading into the quasi deadline at the end of March 10th. Two players who have come out and spoken pretty publicly. One, Breanna Stewart, not surprisingly, vice president of the Players Association, but Caitlin Clark, a young star who doesn't have a formal role in the Players Association. They came out together and said, we need to keep talking until we get something done. I don't know. I imagine they carry a lot of weight. They probably can't sway everybody, but it'll be interesting to see. We haven't heard anything from either side in terms of, well, we're going to delay the season. So my sense is that they're probably getting very close to things to have an agreement in principle. But an agreement in principle is not a signed agreement. That will take some time as well. But it'll be interesting to see.
We talk about this almost any time there's a labor negotiation discussion on this show or in general, that the negotiations always seem to be happening at times when it doesn't feel like it's a good time for the sport. But that's, in reality, the CBAs come up. They have to be negotiated. And, you know, in the case of baseball, which will be coming up, and certainly in the case of the WNBA, I think the players went into it feeling like they were in a good position because things had gone well. Numbers were up. You mentioned Caitlin Clark. A lot of people credit Caitlin Clark for being a big piece of why that is. But the level of play has continued to go up. And the valuations of these teams have continued to go up, which is certainly where I think the players are coming from when they look to negotiate. But, you know, the league had stayed pretty firm on where they thought they can go. Listen, as someone that wants to see the parties get back, not miss games, I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing that they're kind of locked in and trying to get it done. So I think that overall is a good thing.
What about you?
We have not talked about this at all on the show, and I feel a little bad for it. I haven't necessarily followed it either. I love the World Baseball Classic. I think it's an important event. I think it's a great event. I just haven't been as into it this year. Now, fortunately for the sport of baseball, I'm not necessarily a factor in this because the initial numbers have been very good. But the reference in the introduction to the show was a massive upset, or at least by baseball standards, and a completely massive upset with Italy beating the U.S., obviously a favored team and a loaded stack team, to put the hopes of the U.S. team in terms of advancing in question, meaning, they have to kind of wait and see what happens in some other games. And some of those may be going on right now, and I haven't necessarily looked.
Italy, which has been undefeated, has to beat Mexico, which is another good team.
But Italy, I mean, most people wouldn't think Italy is a powerhouse. I'm half Italian, so I don't feel that, I feel pretty excited that an Italian team is good. Of course, it's loaded with Major League Baseball players, too.
Yeah.
Including a lot that were born in the United States. They just happen to have cool Italian names, or a lot of them do.
So yesterday, Mark DeRosa, the manager of Team USA, made a public comment that said, well, we don't have to win the game tonight to advance to the medal round, which was factually incorrect. and Major League Baseball went so far as to take the post down. So somebody knew that it was wrong, that was not true. I'd like to believe the team was made aware of the fact that it wasn't true between when he made the comment and when the first pitch was thrown. But the way he managed and the way he played leads you to believe that maybe that wasn't the case, because they went down 8-0.
Yeah. Well, it almost makes it seem as though they got it at a certain point when they made this furious comeback. Maybe they found it midstream. Maybe they got word.
Let's start a conspiracy theory, right?
Yeah.
You and I, 𝗪𝗡𝗔𝗄𝗏 of Italian descent.
Yes.
Maybe he threw the game for his paisan.
Not at that point when you're managing a team that, that now has to wait that out. I know you're joking, but
there was a great article about him in The Athletic the other day of what, how great he's been on the MLB network, how he went in and, sold himself as the right choice for manager of Team USA, because this is his second World Baseball Classic that he's managing. But I think U.S. obviously has to win their next game, but Italy has to beat Mexico.
Yep.
Which is not a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
How about that guy from 𝗙𝗲𝗄𝗿𝗃𝗄? Is that how you say it? I feel like Wayne Gretzky here. He's an electrician, and he pitched like 4 1/3 scoreless innings the other night against Japan, no less. So he faced Ohtani at least once.
Yeah, well, the tournament's just packed with such great players. And the reason the Italy thing, I think, is exciting, and exciting certainly for the sport of baseball and for Major League Baseball, is the building of these audiences of the sport in places where we might not traditionally think they are. Obviously, the Caribbean countries with of Hispanic players, baseball crazy. The Far East of Japan and Korea, huge baseball playing. Australia getting bigger, but Europe is a growth area, major growth area, and I think seeing this, I think, is a benefit. And the numbers have been good. Opening games against the USA's games against Brazil and Great Britain, we crushed GB though early on. That was a one-sided one. But 2.64 million, and then for the Great Britain one, 2.98 million on Fox. So those are good numbers for these type of events. And now if U.S. ends up not advancing, that's going to be trouble in terms of what that means here. But we'll have to take a look at what's going on in the rest of the world as far as growth in those audiences.
I think it would be safe to say that if they do not get out of the medal round, we will not see 𝗪𝗡𝗔𝗄𝗏 managing the team the next go round. I think that's fairly safe.
I'm looking forward to, kind of jumping in. I'm jumping in a little too late, admittedly. I feel a little bad about that, but just too many other things going on. What else do you have on your list?
Well, you mentioned it before you hit the record button. We have another betting scandal. This one involving Major League Soccer. 2 players, Derek Jones and 𝗂𝗓𝗄𝗏, I believe is how you say his name, while playing for the Columbus Crew, bet on themselves and the Crew. That's no bueno. In fact, one of the bets that they made was prop bet that Jones would get a yellow card, and they shared that with other bettors who ostensibly profited from it because he did in fact get a yellow card.
And it's not easy, or it's not hard, for a player to get himself a yellow card.
You slide in with, cleats up, and you're going to get a yellow card. It's just...
Yeah, I almost hate that we keep talking about it, but it needs to be discussed. And of course, Don Garber came out and he said the right thing, and he's not wrong. They got it because the way that they're looking at the data, they were able to flag this activity, and that's good.
As far as it goes,
right?
It's good.
So until it stops the action, if the idea is all of those things are in place to prevent the action, until we see that it's being prevented, these guys are banned for life.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll never see another one again, but it based on what we've seen over the last 12 months in betting scandal across sports, it seems like it's awfully enticing to get involved in this, or people think it is. It's not, because they end up getting nailed, but it hasn't stopped this stuff popping up.
Yeah, there's always going to be somebody stupid enough to think that they can beat the system. There's always going to be people who
are greedy enough to try to beat the system, I don't think you stop it. And here's the thing: the punishment, yes, it was quick, it was swift, it was, they identified it quickly, they swiftly punished. The punishment was severe. But the bottom line is these two players, they harmed the integrity of the match. And while it was a regular season match, any particular regular season match could have implications for the postseason, seedings, what have you. Yeah. Draft, where you go in the draft the next year.
Yeah.
So, again, I'm not blaming Commissioner Garber. It's just, it was good as far as it went.
One of the things that was connected to this story, which I don't think was fair, is that this obviously comes on the heels of the announcement of Polymarket being an official partner of MLS.
Had nothing to do with it.
No, right. It didn't, because it wasn't on that platform. And remember, yellow cards were one that was banned from the prediction markets. So I thought it was a little unfair, but that is going to, accentuate the criticism coming at the league, because it does come right on the heels of that. But I think it was, having that in the story seemed a bit unfair, because it clearly wasn't on that platform from everything I can tell. I don't know if it was across other multiples traditional sports betting platforms. And it is true. These leagues, when they cut the deals on the prediction with the prediction market companies, are able to, any market that gets created could get dumped off and not included. They can say, no, we don't approve of that. It's gone.
We are never going to run out of things to talk about as it relates to betting scandals.
Yeah.
Just today, or yesterday, the NCAA announced that it was going to be monitoring officials in the upcoming men's basketball tournament and some other NCAA championships to ensure that the calls that are made are consistent with the officials' past performance and other things, right? So they believe they have a way to monitor calls that are out of the norm for these officials. But build a 10-foot wall, somebody's going to build a 12-foot ladder. Build a mousetrap, and a mouse will find a way to get the cheese out. Mm-hmm. So it's is what it is, as they say. What else you got? Anything?
Big day on the PGA Tour, of course, and Brian Rolapp, as we've talked about several times, certainly wasting no time making a lot of changes. So in his State of the Tour press conference from TPC Sawgrass, really an entirely new structure of levels of how these tournaments are played, what it means, talking about things like promotion and relegation. I haven't had a huge chance to dive into it yet, but I'm excited too. But it is certainly big news in hiring this executive from the NFL, him coming in with Jay Monahan, leaving in his commissioner role, and Brian is establishing himself in a big way. And I feel like he has the backing of the players, and I think big things are happening while LIV is still, trying to find its like white space, I guess. Really excited to learn more about this. But like I said, I think this is a big move for Brian establishing himself as the guy here and really making some big difference. I'd love to get, kind of your thoughts on what you're seeing.
He's certainly not changing things at the margin. You mentioned promotion and relegation, which I love in any sport. They're going to double the number of signature events. They're going to shorten the season from mid-January to mid-September. They're going to change the number. They're going to change the number of signature events. There's a lot that's going on. And they also mentioned that they want to be in bigger markets. They're only, I believe, in 4 or 6 of the top 10 media markets in New York, and they want to increase in the United States. They're only in 4 or 6 of the top media markets in the U.S., so they're looking to get into bigger markets like Chicago, like New York, Boston, Philly, all the big markets, to make sure that they're covered. I would imagine at some point in the not-too-distant future, they'll be in all 10 of those top markets.
He's playing to the stars of the game as well, shortened season, elements like that. But at the same time, creating more of a social buzz around the league, I believe, that should intrigue the younger players that are coming out of school and are future stars, like we've talked about on the show, the reigning NCAA champion, going over to LIV, which was a big signing for LIV, actually. But then, of course, Blades Brown getting that, showing up and kind of answering that. So I do think some of the moves he's making, because of what it could mean from, major markets, I think of, a feeling of more ongoing buzz around the tour will help in terms of that younger audience that does, and the tour encourages people to build their personal brands via social media. The changes, as I'm seeing them, have something for the stalwarts of the game as well as some of the up and comers.
Like I said, he's making some pretty radical changes, none of which are, in my mind, controversial. There's change for change's sake, and then there's change that makes sense. And from what I've read so far, these changes seem to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's change for purpose, but it's definitely change. To your point, it's not changes on the margin. These are deep and serious adjustments to the entire way the tour operates, really.
All right, so what do you say? We take a break?
I think so.
Yeah, so we will be back in just a moment with a guest that, in the interest of full transparency, we actually recorded last week. You'll be really excited to hear from Dan Gavitt, the Senior Vice President of Basketball for the NCAA.
And we recorded because, he's a little busy.
The fact that he made time for us was just awesome.
It's time for our guest.
We are back, and we are really excited to welcome our guest. Dan Gavitt is the Senior Vice President of Basketball for the NCAA. He joined the organization in 2012 after having spent the last 7 seasons before that as the Associate Commissioner for Men's Basketball at the Big East Conference. In his current role, Dan oversees the day-to-day operations of the NCAA Division I's Men's Basketball Championship, as well as the NCAA's 11-year, $10.6 billion contracts, that's billion with a B, with broadcast partners CBS and Turner Broadcasting. He also oversees the postseason NIT, as well as the NCAA Division II and III men's basketball championships, and he serves as the staff's day-to-day contact at Division I Men's Basketball Committee and the Men's Basketball Oversight. Dan has an extensive career in collegiate athletics, having spent time as the Director of Athletics at Bryant, one of the biggest Division II athletic programs in the country. He also ran his own sports marketing agency and was even an assistant basketball coach at Providence College, where he received his MBA. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tim and David. Great to be with both of you.
So let's get started. As I mentioned in the introduction, you've been with the NCAA for nearly 14 years. Tell us how, in that time, the men's game in general, and particularly the men's tournament, has changed since you've been with the organization.
I'd say quite a bit. I think some of the changes in men's basketball have been more notable in just the last 3 years here, as college athletics has changed so much and evolved now with house settlement and revenue sharing that institutions can do with student athletes. And I think men's basketball, among other sports, has benefited from that. Student athletes being able to make money off their name, image, and likeness and have revenue shared with them by the institutions has probably encouraged more talented players to come to play college basketball, whether they be domestic elite players or international players that wouldn't have otherwise come to play college basketball. And then they're staying in school a little longer because the pay is pretty significant compared to other opportunities, unless of course they're NBA level players, in which case they're still taking advantage of those opportunities with the great game that's so healthy worldwide.
Tim mentioned the television deal with CBS and Turner. That runs, I believe, through 2032, so it's an incredible deal, and one that obviously has benefited the NCAA and college basketball, I think, greatly. Assuming, and I think we can somewhat assume based on everything we're seeing, the proposed merger between Paramount and Warner Brothers Discovery does go through. Do you see that impacting the current deal at all, or possibly as you look way down the road, future relationships with those parties?
Well, they are incredible partners for men's basketball. You mentioned the deal that goes back to 2010, but we extended that deal in 2016. It's currently now in year 2 of that 8-year extension, an $8.8 billion AAV deal. So it's actually at 1.1, $1.1 billion AAV, annual average value. So you're right. We go through 2032. They've been incredible partners. We're still learning about this potential merger, and think it's a positive for our tournament. They work so well together as it is. They've been incredible partners since taking the business back in 2010. I think we will see how, that will evolve over time. Streaming has become more and more part of how we engage with major events. And, we do have a great streaming product, March Madness Live. CBS also has Paramount Plus, and Turner has HBO Max. So we have some protections in our contract around linear distribution and having all the games available in full national windows. But we'll see how that evolves with the evolution of sports and the way they're distributed and fans engage.
Yeah. So in 1985, the NCAA men's basketball tournament expanded to 64 teams. Purely coincidental, might have been the height of the Big East Conference with 3 teams in the Final Four, including Villanova with that great win over Georgetown and my St. John's Johnnies, all in the Final Four that year. Fast forward ahead to 2011, we expand to 68 teams. So what's that, 26 years? Now we're sitting here at 68 teams. What do you think it would take to expand beyond 68 teams? Do you see that happening over the next few years? What can you share about that?
Sure. Well, the basketball committees have been considering, as I think, we've been very transparent about whether or not to expand the tournaments, men's and women's, beyond 68 teams. There's been discussion about modest expansion, would be more in the range of 72 or 76 teams, additional 4, additional 8. It's more complex than I think people give credit to, even modest expansion like that, the expense of it, the operational side of it, whether or not it's beneficial to the tournament and to college basketball during the regular season as well. Currently, the committees have kind of paused their work on it for being focused on 2026 championships. We'll bring it back up again in the spring. I don't know how I would handicap it. I don't know, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, but I do think with the growth of college basketball, the parity and investment that's being made at many levels of the game in so many different schools, that it's worth considering it. As you know, Tim, it's been a very, very long time since the tournament expanded of any size, going back to all the way to the mid-'80s, except for the modest expansion from 64 to 68. So time will tell, but nothing imminent and nothing that's being worked on currently until sometime after this year's Final Fours.
I think it's somewhat of a follow-up on that, because you do have some purview on the National Invitation Tournament, the NIT. Does that still have a place to you? Its reputation, if I'm being honest, has gone through some changes here and there with it moving from the finals being moved from the Garden, say. Just what are your thoughts? Does it belong? Does it have a place? Where does it fit?
Great question. We think it absolutely does. I mean, the history of the NIT, as you know, predates the NCAA tournament history, and it's got great heritage and history and tradition because of that. It provides opportunities for schools, teams, and conferences that may not have as much opportunity in the NCAA tournament in March Madness. We have great interest from our schools and conferences to keep the NIT healthy and strong and provide those opportunities. We have a great partner in ESPN that values the NIT greatly. We started a women's basketball invitational a couple of years ago to match the NIT, and that's been very widely appreciated and supported by our membership. So we think it absolutely does have a place. To your point, David, does it have the same level of interest and notoriety as it did maybe 25 years ago? Maybe not, but that doesn't mean that there's still not great value. And so we're excited about the 32-team field starting here in a couple weeks' time as well.
Great. Thank you for that. And before we move on, we're going to bring you into the silliness of Wait What with DP and McGhee. We have a weird tradition that when someone says great question, if the person asking it isn't the one that wrote it, we acknowledge the person that did. In this case, not only do I give credit for Tim for writing that question on the original list, but getting an extra point that I'm giving him because I questioned that question.
He said,
do we really want to? We only got so much time with Dan. Do we want to talk about the NIT?
Well, I was going to say if Bruce Pearl had his way, Miami of Ohio might be headed for the NIT, despite being 29-0. We'll have to see what the committee what the committee comes up with when they come up with the field. But let's talk about that. I think any college basketball fan would love to be in the room when those conversations are going on. And we're not asking you to talk about anything proprietary or confidential. But what are some of the things, like you mentioned before we came on, that there's a new data analytics figure that is going to be that's going to work its way into the committee's process. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. So the NCAA evaluation tool, the net ranking, gets a lot of attention. That was introduced several years ago to replace the RPI, which is a very dated and overly simplistic analytic that the committee used in the selection, seeding, and bracketing process about a decade ago. The net ranking is a predictive and results-oriented analytic that has been very successful and helped the committee in analyzing teams. But there's 6 other metrics that are on the team sheet the committee uses for their evaluation of teams. And the most recently added one is called Wins Above Bubble, the WAB, which essentially tries to right-size different schedules and schedule strengths, comparing maybe an SEC team that has, multiple quad one opportunities, high-level non-conference opportunities, against a mid-major that may not have those same strength of schedule opportunities. And how do you kind of right-size comparing teams with very different schedules? The WAB helps to do that. It's a resume based analytic. It's more results oriented than it is predictive. And so because of that, it's been most helpful to the committee in evaluating teams, especially for selection, but also seeding. And one that is, I think fans should pay more and more attention to, because it is notable in the committee's evaluation of teams.
We had 𝗙𝗲𝗁𝗂𝗿𝗃, who chairs the NCAA Men's Selection Committee, on before football season, because we wanted to talk to a conference commissioner, particularly one outside of the Power Four, and he was a great guest, and it was nice kind of getting that insight. So we are going to be very clued in, as we like honoring our past guests and things that they're doing in the future. So thanks for giving us a little preview on that. I want to go back to the media side for a second, because you mentioned the streaming product that you have. Looking a few years down the road, maybe more than a few, is the NCAA tournament this absolute jewel on the sports calendar that all sports fans really love? Any chance, with the way media is moving, that ever ends up becoming a full-out streaming product?
I've been around long enough that I don't make predictions anymore about the future, because I've been wrong too many times. When we look out 6 years from now, I think anything's possible. We have so many different media companies. We've got great partners, CBS and WBD, and soon to be One under Paramount. We have another great partner in ESPN for the Women's Basketball Championship and all the rest of the NCAA championships they own the rights to. Most of the more, except for the streamers like Netflix or Amazon, the other more traditional media companies now have all 3 different options in many cases. They have broadcast over the air, they have cable, and they have streaming, right? So how does all that kind of evolve over time? Major properties we follow, obviously the NFLs, the NBAs, and the Major League Baseballs, they continue to want to have their content distributed by multiple different media platforms. And so we think that still is the model that makes the most sense in the short term here. But 6 years from now, who knows? And, we did a deal with ESPN a couple of years ago for NCAA championships, Women's Basketball Championship, and others. And we made that deal term through 8 years as well, now 2 years into it, completed in 2032. We did that very intentionally so that all of our media rights for all NCAA championships are coterminous. We think that sets up the future at the NCAA for championships to be able to go to market to explore all the different opportunities that would avail themselves for the NCAA at that time. You could imagine packaging basketballs together or not. We just think that gives the NCAA in the future the most flexibility, and we'll see what the industry offers at that time. But you look at what the NFL has done, for example, with Amazon and striking a deal for Black Friday, right, where you have NFL live content together with opportunities for fans to engage with shopping for Christmas and the holidays. March Madness is about is a 3-week window, really 4 if you include the selection week. You think about how you engage with consumerism and through a streaming product that might have other things they're selling, like an Amazon or Netflix. It could be pretty powerful to package some of this content around other commercial opportunities that are not part of our kind of traditional way of delivering the tournaments now. So I'm not trying to predict the future, but I do think having flexibility and seeing how things evolve, I think anything's possible, David. It's a great question, and we'll see what the future holds.
I'll never forget when I was with Singular Wireless and, now AT&T, NCAA corporate champion, we actually had the rights to stream every tournament game on our devices. And CBS found out very quickly the value of that and pulled it back the next time we renewed the deal. But content will always find a way to get out to fans. Dan, before we let you go, we know how busy you are. We have two questions that we ask all of our guests. So if you don't mind, the first one is, how'd you get your start in the sports business?
Well, I was very fortunate. I've been fortunate throughout my career. When I graduated from college, I wanted to coach and teach at high school level, prep school. I didn't find a job doing that. I did find an opportunity. I interviewed for a graduate assistant position on the basketball staff at Providence College. And the head coach at the time was Rick Barnes. I was fortunate enough to get the graduate assistant opportunity with Rick, and I ended up working for him as an assistant basketball coach for 6 years. One of my big mentors still to this day, someone I learned an enormous amount from. That's how I got my start as an assistant coach. And that when I was there, I did a lot of other administrative things in my role as an assistant coach. And those administrative experiences helped to lead me years later to have the opportunity to become an athletic director, and then to a conference office, and then ultimately here to the NCAA. So really, really fortunate to have the opportunities that I was able to earn, I guess, over the years, and have mentors like Rick Barnes and Mike 𝗙𝗂𝗂𝗏, the former commissioner of the Big East Conference, as people besides my parents that really helped to shape my career.
Yeah. And the last question, what one piece of advice would you give to a young person looking to break into the sports industry?
Well, it's a lot more competitive now than when I started, 35 plus years ago. So, I mean, when I do meet young people, I meet them regularly that are interested in working in college sports and the sports industry. The first thing I say is try to get involved while you're in college. Like, do work as a work study job for sports information, sports communications, event management, development, whatever it might be at your college or university. Get some practical experience and have something on your resume, even as an undergraduate, because even applying for internships, post-grad, or entry-level jobs, most of the time now you're going to be competing with young people that have had experiences as undergraduate students. And so that is the advice I would give anybody, is start early. Even if you're unpaid in those experiences, having something on your resume, starting a little bit of a network is going to serve you quite well as you get started.
Dan, can't thank you enough. We know how busy you are, and it's only going to get busier starting on Sunday, March 15th, when Selection Sunday happens. And I get ready to spend much of the next few weeks until I head out to Final Four on my couch watching games. So good luck, and thank you again for coming on.
And thank you, if I could, thank you for everything you and your family has done for this great sport of college basketball.
Thank you. Well, my dad certainly loved the sport of college basketball, the people involved with it, and we're all fortunate that he left something behind his legacy. And I'll quote my dear friend Clark Kellogg from CBS Sports as we look ahead: embrace the joy of March Madness, because it is a joyful time and experience.
Yeah, it is indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
We are back. And thank you again to Dan Gavitt, Senior Vice President of Basketball for the NCAA. We are in the midst of conference tournaments right now. We're recording this on a Wednesday. So in about 4 days' time, there will be in a room in Indianapolis making the final determination on which 68 teams will be playing in the men's tournament and who will be playing who and where. So I guess that goes to our first thing, David. What are you looking forward to? I'm looking forward to a lot of basketball.
Yeah, well, you have so many things to look forward to at this time, not just because it's awesome to follow the tournament, but of course all the stuff going on with the Naismith. And you should give us an update when I bounce it back over to you. But a couple things. One of the great things about living in New York is, everybody in our industry, of course, pops in. And Jake was in town. So past guest 𝗙𝗲𝗁𝗁𝗁, who we've had on the show, just Was he our last guest?
No, no. Well,
No, he
Dan,
wasn't.
and
No,
then
no, yeah.
Kennan. We had
Well,
Kennan.
we had Kennan, and then Jake. See,
Yeah.
but anyway, it's always so good. I mean, it was a little, they didn't win last week, so there was that.
Not for nothing, but he never tells me when he's coming to New York.
Well, but remember, he knows I like live right in Midtown. So
well, Steve, I'm
anyway.
I'm a 40-minute train ride.
He has a cool personnel announcement that I can't say yet, but it'll be something we'll want to mention coming up here pretty soon.
Okay.
Quick shout out, Bob Harlan, who I had an unbelievably successful tenure in my view, because they beat the Bears so often. With the Green Bay Packers, passed away at 89 recently. He left his mark on the game. So shout out to him. Not to go back to my comfort zone, but what's happening in the Middle East region right now definitely has a potential to impact Formula One season. I think it is expected that the Bahrain and Saudi Arabian races will be canceled, which are the fourth and fifth race of the season before they come to Miami for the first U.S. race of the year. And there's, rumors about it, one of the races going to Portugal and one of the races going to Imola, which has traditionally had a race up until this year. That race was pulled off the schedule this year. But I don't think that's a feasible thing at this stage, just like, staging. So I think the expectation is that they come off. That's happened before, certainly, for various reasons. But certainly, obviously any of these geopolitical things, like war, impact a lot of things, and this is one of them.
Well, the question I have is war. What is it good for?
Edwin Starr. I'm hoping that somehow tonight, we're recording this on a Wednesday, that somehow the Deacs make a run in the ACC tournament, knocked off Virginia Tech in a great overtime game yesterday. So I'm pretty excited to see. I don't have high expectations, so don't get me wrong there.
Well,
but it would be kind of cool.
Duke is missing 2 starters. UNC is missing 1 starter. So anything can happen in that tournament.
But since we're talking college, and I'm going to throw it back over to you, I don't know if we've gotten the multiple executive orders out of the Saving College Sports roundtable that took place at the White House with, I think, one agent that might represent some players, but that's it. So no one really from that side. And but yeah, I'll let you comment on that first, if you want to.
What do I say? The belief that an executive order solves all problems is just silly. One of the things that I did read coming out of that roundtable was they believe it may have put a little bit more pressure on Congress, particularly Democratic senators, to pass the SCORE Act, which would sort of supersede all of the various state laws and regulations, and is seen, maybe not in its current format, but is seen in general as a good step towards leveling the playing field across the country. I'm not optimistic that anything will get done, because I'm never optimistic that Congress will get anything done. But that seems to be the most positive thing that came out of that. And I do know that Randy Levine, the president of the Yankees, who was part of this group that met, made it a point to say on more than one occasion that athletes will be consulted, athletes will be involved in the process. I think that's absolutely critical.
Yeah. I think the process was interesting because most people, I think, that were part of it came in with the idea of, the Supreme Court ruling came down, the idea that athletes were going to go back completely to a time where they're not getting paid. That's not really part of the discussion. Nobody came into that except the one person that called the meeting, who I think, after the fact would have, kind of said, well, that would be nice, but because I think it's a non-starter, as well as I think just stupid and short-sighted in terms of what could be done. Getting the idea of what NIL truly is supposed to be back, addressing the issue of pay. I think all of those things are reasonable thoughts to explore. We'll see what comes out from the pen and whether it matches up with anything in reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Last thing I'm looking forward to this weekend, ECAC hockey quarterfinal matchup. The Big Red of Cornell hosting the Crimson of Harvard. Always a tough matchup. And this one, unlike regular season, this is a best of 3 series. Cornell got the bye last week, so hopefully they're rested and healthy, but we will see. So this is the time of the show where we thank you, our listeners. Once again, thank you to Dan Gavitt of the NCAA. If you like what you hear, hit that like button, that subscribe button, comment, share. If you want to find out anything about the podcast, go to dpandmcgee.com. You'll find links to all of the places where you can see our content. Until next time, he's DP, I'm McGee, and we'll talk soon.